Hey, my beautiful listeners, we are back with season 3 of The Beautiful Side of Grief, and I'm your host, Helen Morris. My incredible guests continue to share their own personal stories of grief in so many different forms and how they have managed to find the positives and beauty from their experiences. And I hope by listening to these honest, heartfelt accounts, you can find the tips, insights, resources, and strategies you need for where you're at here and now. And maybe one day even find a beautiful side to your grief like I have. So share away, as I would love this podcast to reach as many who need to hear it as possible. Don't forget to check out the episode notes as well for more information and links. Plus the energy healing I do that changed my life forever. And this season, I'd also love to share the affirmations and meditations I'm working on, so stay tuned for those. Right now, though, my thanks for listening, and let's check out who this week's guest is. I don't know about you, but my life seemed to be a continual series of experiences that produced in me guilt, blame, despair, anger, shame, resentment, but most of all, jealousy. It felt like I was constantly in a revolving cycle of this, and it took me further and further away from who I am. And it took some major events in my life to shift me out of that. And of course, my desire not to stay trapped in that cycle. My guest in this episode, Afterlife expert and divine guide Dylan McMahon, recognizes this well. It is through transcendence that she could find the inherent goodness and grace to understand tragedy and its role in her life. She had a son recently transition herself and knows the depth of pain surrounding this. She has an incredible story to share of how she dealt with his passing that has led to her understanding how to move through the darkness, unlock her heart to the power of unconditional love, to become wise in her own knowing and remembrance. It is her mission and gift to the world to help as many others who have suffered major tragic events, who feel lost and disconnected, find this as well through her work as a Reiki Master, registered nurse, intuitive energy healer, and ascended coach who works with the Council of Light. She is raised on the outskirts of Sedona, Arizona, and is coming to us today from the southern part of that state. The intention I'm setting for this episode is to help you have an understanding of what transcendence is, that you are able to not only communicate with your loved ones who have transitioned, but also have an understanding of why tragedy occurs and how you can view this from a place of love and grace rather than pain. I know this is a big ask for those of you who may be new to this whole way of thinking of the afterlife, though I hope you will do so with an open heart and mind. As always, my heartfelt thanks for trusting in what I am doing and listening in. And I'm sending a universe of love, light, and hope to you in your own journey. Thank you for joining me, Julie. It is so wonderful to have you here today.
Thank you. Thank you. What a beautiful opening. Beauty.
Oh, thank you.
It's on the screen. It's in your work, and you shine it. You emote it. You emote beauty. So I'm honored.
Thank you.
Honored to be a part.
Well, I have to say that I am really honored to be speaking to someone who shares a similar experience with my own, with the transitioning of our children, because I didn't understand that reaction when I first had it. I knew it was right, though I thought, wow, I didn't expect to respond this way. And I really had difficulty in describing it to others so that they could understand. I understood it, but I didn't know how to explain it so they could understand.
Yeah.
And I felt like they were often just giving me like grace and given the circumstances of child dying. So it's really, really, really valuable for me to be speaking with you today. So thank you.
Yeah. That's that interesting thing about communication and resonance. So when you have this message or you want to be able to converse and share what you're experiencing, it feels different when you definitely have a story to be told. And I was part of the experience right from the beginning. I was thrusted into the afterlife and the life with the transition of Dakota. And so as my husband says, you're writing the manual of it, because everyone around me was telling and seeing such a different story than what I was experiencing. And there's parts in my story that are visceral, as I call it, because we're in a very physical plane. But the bigger part of the story is the ability to rise through it, up out of it, and that you're part of something much, much bigger than just
so excited to understand this and unwrap it in that, because I think we have to acknowledge and honor the visceral parts that we experience, but then also on the bigger part that we perhaps had no awareness of until, these events occur. And for me, I always say to people that out of the most tragic experience in my life came the best, came the most beautiful things. And it almost seems like, how can you have both happening in the same sentence? Yet it is true. It is true. And so let's dive into this. So let's start with what you experienced through the transitioning of your son, Dakota, recently, because you mentioned that his death transition became your transcendence.
Yes. Yeah. So it's been right at 1 year that Dakota has transitioned. So in earthly terms, that's very new. So, but like I said, the moment that I was walking up the stairs, I was rushed to his apartment. I got that call that he wasn't breathing, and I was going to go up those stairs. And that very first step, well, first there was an officer that told me he's gone. She stopped me, and my soul knew that wasn't true. So right away, I was in touch with my higher self, because I had a strong knowing that that information was not true, even though I knew his body would be without vitality. As a nurse, I knew what I was going to see at the top of those stairs. So that first step, going up the steps to my son's apartment, I started an out-of-body experience, because as a mother of a child, when you get the news that they've transitioned, I don't use the word death. It's a little bit, there's a lot tied into what we think death is. But when he transitioned, I was already in the afterlife. There was a part of my soul that was where his soul was immediately. So my consciousness knew that even before I went through all the stages of seeing my son and having to deal with a funeral and the death of him. And I think that's that bond between a child and a parent that is so strong that the most bonds of creative love are experienced. And so my consciousness just grabbed it. I was aware that I'm where he is now. Part of me is going to understand that. So that's why I say from the beginning, my transcendence, which is the word itself, means being able to rise above to a higher understanding than what reality is giving you at that moment. And that's what it requires, because pieces of you that are being resurrected, rechanged when reality is now going to be that they're in a different place, you have to make sense of it. So I walked up those steps, completely surrendered and completely having the life just breathe me. And I just became in contact with a greater force, and I call it my higher self. Some of us refer to ego death, but it was a part of me that I did not need anymore. That, you think of all the things that were important. What are you going to eat? What are you going to drive? What were you going to do that evening? None of that mattered at that point. What mattered is the creation of all that is. And so I was hyper aware of that in that moment. I had two perspectives right at the beginning. So that's why his transition became my transcendence. And as the story unfolds, as we'll get into it, I chose to go in a certain direction of following that showed up at the very beginning moment.
Yes, and that's a brave thing to do, because it is going against the grain of what a lot of people know and understand. And I just want to understand, was what degree of spiritual openness and awareness would you say you had prior to Dakota transitioning that, like, had you had similar experiences to this before?
So prior to Dakota transitioning, I had already been a self journey. I had already been cleaning and purifying my energy system. I was a Reiki Master. I was meditating on a regular basis. So I myself had been doing my inner work. Now, does that prepare you for the sudden transition of a child? I think that we all that are sharing that experience, you never really are quite prepared for the reality, sudden change. So that's where I say you have to make, the visceral part, the human part is you're never fully prepared for that. But if you, in one of the awakening series that I was in, I say, if you hadn't been doing the inner work prior, you get to do that as well as trying to understand the new reality. You're going to end up with both. So I was super grateful that I had so much in clear channel within myself that my consciousness was being able to, I realized it. I mean, I saw it. I saw that higher perspective, that God aspect, if you will, at the beginning. So I think because I had a clear vessel, that's why I was able to see the two perspectives, the human and the soul. When I refer to that out of body experience is because I feel like I had been doing the choices of, all the good things that you would do, going within, quieting my mind, resting and working, the balance between both. I wasn't an anxious person. I wasn't working too hard. I had a very balanced life.
And I want to explain to our listeners who can't see you and maybe can feel you, but maybe can't. You have the most beautiful, serene, calm aura.
Mm-hmm.
And I admire you so much because a year after losing your precious boy is not a long time at all. And for you to be in this beautiful state is truly a blessing, really. Seriously. And it's testimony to all the work that you've done beforehand that's, allowed you to allow yourself to relax into this state of being, I think. Yeah. So if we have somebody listening who has a really strong religious foundation that doesn't necessarily allow them to believe in being able to connect to our loved ones in the spiritual realm, like you've just described, that you connected to a higher being, a higher source, whatever you want to call it. Can you explain whether both belief systems are able to coexist together comfortably, or, do we have to choose?
So I believe that we live in a universe that has endless possibilities, and that all things come from all that is good and all that is light. So there's room for all of it. I've never thought that it made sense to have to pick good or bad, right or left, but neutrality, neutral space of allowing everything to be felt more comfortable. And so if someone at the point in their journey has religion providing them the comfort, the connection, the resonance to bring their soul forward, it's serving a beautiful purpose. If you rise to a higher understanding that maybe church doesn't serve you and you're going to look for it in nature, nothing wrong with that either. So I believe that there's room for all of it, and that it's perfectly fine if religion is serving what your needs are when you need. And I always tell my religious friends, when they hear me talk and they want to warn me or be careful, or they kind of, you're a little far out there, I tell them, listen to what I say. And does it feel good? Because there's nothing in what I'm saying that is harmful, that is detrimental. Everything I talk about comes from a loving nature, a pure place. And so if anything inside you is fearful or restricts, like like God is a vengeance God, something inside me says, I don't think so. I think God is an expansive God. So I just, I like to let go of the restriction, the fear. If fear comes up first, I just try to soften it with, why are you trying to play small with something that's so much more? So I just try to be gentle with where people's belief system is. And I always try to lead them to think about, what is the harm in my belief versus yours? Is there really anything? Because what most people, if you listen to what their soul is saying, they want to try to talk as if there's something that we're not privy to or that we need to be protected from. And one of the gifts that came with my son's transition is I don't have fear. I don't live as a fearful person as transitioning or, when my mom says, drive safe, I'm like, and if I don't, I will see you on the other side. I no longer play in these realms of restriction, I guess. So,
And that is such a beautiful way of describing it. And I connect so strongly with what you were just saying there about no longer fearing things, because I lived my life probably prior to Tao transitioning, very less so, but still very much in a fear-based model. Okay. So I still feared a lot. I still had all these expectations of myself and others and the world and what it owed me and what it didn't owe me and all those sorts of things. And I remember having this profound moment of just saying, it doesn't matter anymore. It's not important anymore. And like you say, if I were to go tomorrow, today, next year, it's okay. It's okay. I don't fear anything anymore. And letting go fear has been so liberating. So beautiful and liberating. Oh, gosh, this is exciting.
It is. It is. That's why I sometimes I look at grief as a box, and I'm like, if you just pick it up and turn it over, it's where the gifts come out. There's just always that two ways of looking at something, and there really are gifts in all things, all blessings. It's just we have to receive them. We have to be open to them. And when I kneeled over Dakota's body, I had so much gratitude for him, so much gratitude for just who he ever was in eternity. I just was overwhelmed with gratitude. I did not have a typical reaction of, why did you take him from me? I felt love and just pouring out of me. And I just talked from my soul about, okay, I love you so much. I will follow you. This doesn't end here. I will follow you. And so the following has been a journey that has taken off restriction, removed fear, and has liberated not only his soul, but my soul through the experience that we find ourselves in, that we're in currently.
Ah, gosh, that just gives me shivers. That seriously does. Because it's that knowing, isn't it? It's that you don't necessarily have to understand it, but you just know it deep within, that this has got a bigger purpose, that there's more to this than what you realize. And I know that sat very, very strongly with myself. But that also doesn't mean to say that you still can't grieve in a traditional sense as well, and still have days where you just miss their physical presence dearly, does it? Do you still have those days?
I do. I transcended the typical grief. I didn't have anger. I didn't have shame. I didn't have guilt. I didn't feel depressed. But sadness, yes. Sadness, if you sit with it, it really is love. It's you loved someone so much that you have tenderness where that love is concerned. And to me, that's sadness. So when I get the feeling of sadness, I let it go through me, and it always leads me back to loving this being as much as I did, and I do still. And it's the loving still in the present moment, unbroken, that gets me to the next experience, and I don't stay stuck. And that's the flow state. When emotions are just meant to be experienced, that's why I don't believe the grief process as far as stages. You're kind of getting people to have to go through something linear, and you're also saying you can go through a stage of anger. I don't think so. I think you should experience it, but then always come back to the pulse, which is love, which is the bonds that are created in having relationship with other. When you know yourself as love, what greater thing but to know love outside yourself? That's why we have brothers and sisters and sons and daughters and husbands. That is what we have as the gift of life, relation with others. God created us out of love, and we created the child, and it goes on from there. So this shared experience of energy, of pouring in and receiving, that's what we're here for. And I think if the world could get back to that knowing state and treat everyone from that open heart, then we would find society and the world and the community and service to others would just harmonize itself, because it's an equal exchange of energy.
So we're going to dig into that a little bit more, but just before we do that, I want to understand, because you mentioned gratitude and how grateful you were for your beautiful boy, and that is not your typical response again, especially when you just discover that they've transitioned. But there is a huge, incredible amount of power behind gratitude. And it's not that you're grateful that they have transitioned, but it's having great gratitude for who they were in your life and who they represented in your life. Because that was one thing people didn't understand. I just said, I'm really grateful. I'm grateful that she was with me for 18 years. Yes, but Helen, don't you feel that you've been cheated? Don't you feel... Well, no, I don't want to go there, because I can't change any of that. The reality is what it is.
Yes.
And I want to be grateful for what I had. Is that how you look at gratitude as well?
I did. And I say that I had divine 19 years with Dakota. He had divine 19 years. So when his 1 year came up, when his birthday came up, he passed in March and his birthday was in September. I didn't celebrate as if he was 20. I fully accept he had 19 earthly years. So to me, it's divine 19. That's why my life with him here. And yeah, I got the same people say, he's not going to go to college and you're not going to get to see all these things. But exactly like you, I accepted I won't. But what I do have with Dakota is a different relationship, and I have a relationship with him still. And it is remarkable. It's based on phenomenon. It's based in your heart, and it encompasses everything I do. Probably a lot of what you're doing right now with these podcasts is because you've merged with her on a level that's added to the purpose of what we do with the rest of our life. So I had that time with Dakota, and then I have what I do with the rest of my life. And I know because he transitioned that I have a limited time offer also, and I'm here to leave a mark. I'm here to do good. And I look at it like, what is it that I'm doing that I can do with the rest of my time on my way back to him and everyone that I love that's already in the afterlife? And that's how I live. They say, how do you live without Dakota? I don't. And second, I live as if everyone is Dakota and that I'm doing what I'm meant to do for the rest of my time after he's already where he is. So I bring all that back when I cross over. What we did together, and you mentioned that word liberation, when we untether them by getting out of the grief process, transcending it, their soul also liberates. We liberate them along with us. Every time we do something, their soul rises, because there really is a unity to all of this that's going on. And I feel so much of those that are on the other side. They're rooting for us, but they get all of it, all that energy, all that divine, all that kindness, all that goodness. They receive all of it. Just as if you think of, if you were just crying in agony constantly, stuck on the timeline of creating something that you don't have, you're creating an energy. And let's just say, if you thought for a moment that their consciousness was aware of it, we would never want to put our child through that anyways. But I just chose to do things as if it was unbroken, because I knew it was unbroken. I knew that the bond that we had was unbroken. So I went straight to Dakota to figure a lot of this out. I went straight to the source. I went straight to my son's soul. And that's where that's where it comes from. So yeah, he's helped me a lot through it. And I just didn't close my heart to him when he transitioned. I kept my heart open to him.
That's such a great way of explaining it. And tell me, what do you suppose or believe our purpose on life here is?
I believe that we, in this physical realm on planet Earth, are here to experience love in form. Love is what's real, and it's what we do when we create those that we're closest with. If you really think about your core group, the people that you are the closest with, what is it that's making all your decisions based around? It's love. It's loving another. And so that's the thing that's real. The car doesn't matter. The food doesn't really matter. The house doesn't matter, because when you have the most precious human being go to the next place, you realize that very quickly. You realize it very quickly that none of those things satisfy you. They're not going to take away that love that you had when your child was in form. And so that was the thing I knew. And I knew it before. I loved him ridiculously when he was here. And so I already knew that. But it's like adding like a million times to it now that he's unlimited. It's just made our love, multidimensional and bigger.
We spoke briefly before we started recording, but let's go into it a little bit now, because there is so much chaos happening in the world at the moment. And, we can easily find ourselves being taken further away from loving one another rather than actually loving each other and those around us. Tell me how we should look at that. What is the purpose? How do we navigate loving with an open heart in the chaotic world that we currently have? Sorry, big question.
You gotta take that breath. You gotta take that breath and pause, because we've been doing more than we've been being. We're meant to be the soul essence in form. And so, the best thing is to balance I'm going to talk a little bit medical here, but we're with our phones always having alerts and checking emails. We've created this constant energy of the central nervous system needing to check and go and go and go. And so that's created a society that's very anxious and anxiety and these medical terms that were created. But our true essence, there's also the parasympathetic, the going within, the inner knowing, the intuitive, the gut feeling, the heart that pulls you in a direction. This is important to tune into before you go through the action of an experience, so that you're consciously engaging in the higher experience. And I think so many of us just got into the habit of just doing and mindful living and working in jobs we didn't like and being in relationships that weren't working and all these unnecessary energy drains. So in order to create and get back in touch with love, and I feel like the word needs reinvented, because real authentic love is that part of you that starts within, and you're so filled up that your cup runneth over. It's easy to give to others. It's easy to just give a soft embrace and say, I hear what you're saying. And to just pause instead of waiting for them to stop so your mind can get in that what you have to say. It's too much doing. So COVID gave us the chance to go within, but everybody should go within and just really clean up emotional intelligence and just kind of start going back into the heart and not so much the little mind that wants to create lists to do every single day, but to stop. And when your feet hit the ground, really recall what you're grateful for and commence giving love somewhere along the way and kindness along the way, instead of irritation, frustration, and, product of the world. So you just keep giving it the same energy. And in a lot of people, it really is simple. I tell them, start with the low hanging fruit. Go out in the sun, sit at a park, get in nature just for a few moments. All of this will start to rearrange your cells, which are made of water and light, and you will start resonating with the frequencies of Earth. And then you're easier to relate to the beings on Earth. But you got to just maybe start clearing out your agenda and balance the doing with the being a little bit more. And then it's going to come natural. You really don't have to work at it because it comes from within. The wellspring opens. And I do believe that every single person has breath being breathed in them, has the ability and the choice to choose that. It's a free will choice. I chose to experience Dakota's transition as something beautiful. I made that conscious choice to do the best I can with it, because what better way to honor his evolutionary step in his existence as it is? He was given to me, and I remember looking down at him and feeling the exact same upon his transition. And this is the most beautiful creation gift that's been given to me to do what I will with it. And if you just have that tenderness, you'll start to change.
Yeah.
And your soul, every single one of our soul, is beautiful and it's light, and there's so much to be shared with the world.
And it's like you said earlier, you start to begin to think less of what it is you want and how you want it and the things you want and all those things. And you naturally go to, how can I help somebody else? How can I better serve somebody else? It's more, or people just naturally pick up on your energy, don't they? That's the crazy thing I find, is that I have people gravitate to me that I don't know, but what they must do is just pick up on this energy and just want to be around you. And it's just the most beautiful feeling. I mean, you just move away from your ego and just go with your heart, which is such a beautiful place. Is that what you mean by activating, having a heart portal activation? Can you just, because this is something that you specialize in with people and helping them shift and move through. You do heart portal activations. Can you just talk to us a little bit about what that is and how that works?
Yeah, so there's the brain puts off an energy wave, as we know, on an EKG. The heart puts off the EKG is from the heart, the EEG is from the brain. So we can pick up an electrical pulse, a wave of energy that comes off of these organs. And there's 8 inches between the brain and the heart. And when those are harmonized, the energy pathway between the brain and the heart are in sync. That's where they've scientifically proven that miracles happen. You can spontaneously heal cancer. So the heart is capable of so much. It is the house of many mansions, as the Bible talks about. It's really, the heart is more far reaching than the brain will ever be. So you can think a thought, but unless it's coupled with an emotion and inner knowing, manifestation can stay at bay from the things that you want because you're too much in the limited mind. The heart has the multidimensionality to reach far into other dimensions, right up to God's source energy itself, whatever it is that you believe it is. So it is the place when people, and I've learned that people don't really know their heart space.
Yeah.
They really, when I take them into a meditation, I get them relaxed and I explain that energy. Now the consciousness is aware of that energy pathway. And I drop them down into the heart as if they're breathing from the heart and what they feel there. And once you're in there, to me, I use the word portal because it opens up into a place that's farther than just the room that you're in. It's farther than just the bed you're laying on. So it's just an opening. It's an opening. And the portal just means that when you go through it, you can enter into what's really real other than this limit. I call this a limited time offer here. And other than just thinking that this is all there is, it opens up the realm of full potential, all possibility.
Wow. So to go there, needs a fair amount of surrender, I think. And when I talk to people about surrender, that again is something that a lot of people have no awareness of, how to surrender, what surrendering is, and why we need to do it. Can you just share with us what your thoughts are around surrendering and the value of this in the whole process that we're talking about?
You nailed it. You nailed it. The way I found this opening, this wide opening in the heart was when complete surrender. So when I was washing Dakota's body, he was at the funeral home and I wanted to wash him and dress him. So the funeral home didn't do any of those. I did it all. And when I was washing his body, I surrendered. I surrendered everything I ever thought I was at that moment. And I became one with the surrealness of life and death and the tenderness that exists in all of it. And in order to fully do all the things that I wanted to do and that I did for my son through that death process, I did it in a surrendered state. And what happens when you keep surrendering is more of you is revealed. More of the remembrance comes back. More of your soul starts to shine through. You start to become that soul essence that's much more than the body. Because at that time, I was able to see the body and what it is and how it is just, part of this realm. And I was also surrounded by the energy of my son's soul. And in order to do that, I had to be surrendered because my ego would have been angry. It would have been in the way. I wouldn't even been able to go into that room. I wouldn't be able to go and do what it is that I did. But I felt I could do it because I had surrendered to the whole event. I knew it wasn't about me. I got out of the way. So when you surrender, you can start to become what all that is. The small part of you, the ego part, it goes away. Your higher self comes forward. And that's where so much can be revealed to you. And I call it remembrance because as you're going through it, you realize that there is perfection. You realize that there is unbreakable love, that there really is something to the pulse of who we are. And you get that when I did. I just said, you can have all of me in this moment. Everything that I ever was, you can have all of it. And I learned a lot. I guess the person you see now is the purity that comes forward.
Yeah, I understand what you're talking about. I do. I feel it. And for me, I didn't dress her body because for, the circumstances, but I made them put her in her best outfit, though, the one that she really, really loved, which would have been a mission. But I remember that morning just having to be away from everybody who was in the house on the day of her service. And I walked into town, which wasn't too far away. And I remember being guided and buying a white dress with daisies on it. And that's what I wore for the service. And we had balloons and we celebrated her. And I sat down in a cafe and I thought, because I didn't want anybody else to talk about her either. I needed to talk for her because she was my girl. We were like that. We were crossing my fingers and we were just so close. And I just thought, nobody knows her better than I do. And I need to do this. And again, that's something that stuns people. They're saying, how could you talk about her? But it was an absolute privilege and an honor. And I just surrendered myself to it. And I let her flow through me. And I just let it just happen. And to this day, I am so, so proud of the beautiful send-off we gave her, which was definitely non-traditional, but it was perfect. It was perfect. So, so we talk about, you talked earlier about not having that anger and not going through those typical stages of grief. And so what other things can we do to allow ourselves to do that will free us from having to feel all that anger and heartache and bitterness and so on?
So when what I did is when anger came up, I realized this isn't serving me. So I went through it quickly.
So you acknowledged it.
Is how, I acknowledged it. It was like, I'm not angry, it was like, so I went through that. So what I learned early on and what Dakota showed me is that when the emotions come up, they're usually tied to a memory or an idea that you had, that you maybe like the idea that they're not going to go to college. That's something that you had that you're holding on to, and that is not their reality any longer. So when I realized, well, he's in the afterlife. So I came to terms with two things early on. One, I believed and knew Dakota was still in the afterlife, that he was viable, that he had a consciousness. Because I believed that and knew that to be true, the next piece of it was I started to acknowledge the higher purpose to it all, the higher power, if you will. So those two things, because I reconciled them quickly within myself, set a foundation that I was able to now apply to the human visceral part that I was going through, because my reality was different. And so these emotions, as they came up, if you feel guilt because you maybe weren't as close as Dakota and I were as a parent, I have some parents that aren't as close. Whatever memory you have of them, they are probably doing their life review of that exact memory. This is where I started to see that the life review that they do on the other side, and you are having the memories or the experience of it. I started realizing he's reviewing this as I'm also remembering or having the same timeline. So I would send love. I would send emotions as if he was here. I would reconcile if there was a moment where anything as a typical kid and he spat it off and I was like, oh, I should have just hugged him again or whatever. I just did it. Yeah. I just did it as if I could. And I just sent love to him. And I was like, you don't have to worry about anything. I would give it to you 100 times over. And when I started doing this, I started getting more signs. I started feeling his presence more. I started feeling less stricken by these emotions that really didn't dictate the eternal part of us. And so when you're in it, I just send love, like relive the memory as if you could just, because it all changes it right then. And you're sending it to that time that's written in the Akashic record, the book of life. You're sending, it goes somewhere. Everything experienced goes somewhere.
Everything is in it.
So if you can realize that, you can now change. You can change any emotion into a better one. You can rise out of it because it doesn't feel good to be in it. I realized it didn't feel good at all. I didn't want to accept the reality that he couldn't be a part of my life or that this all ended. I just consciously chose, okay, if I don't choose that and I choose this, let me see what happens. I refer to this blank page. It's like everything I once knew went off, and I went through every little thing and saw what I got from it. And that's where I started to, oh my gosh, Dakota was showing me his soul expands, and he started bringing people and things into my life, and my life changed drastically, very quickly, because I followed love. I followed love. I did not follow pain. I realized that pain had to be understood. I had to understand it. And what it did is it radically changed my life. Radically. Nothing in my life is the same.
This is bringing me to tears. This seriously is bringing me to tears, and tears of joy, because it is so beautiful. It is exactly what we are talking about. There can just be such a beautiful side to the transitioning of a loved one if we choose to look at it that way. If we choose, and it is always our choice. It always comes from within, what we decide to do. And it's like letting go, overriding all that automatic programming, surrendering to what we truly feel within us and recognize within us, and then running with that regardless. So if we've got somebody who's finding this all a little bit woo-woo, they don't have the faintest idea of where to begin exploring this concept, what would you recommend?
What is it that you want? Go right to the core. What is it that you want? I don't want to be separated from my loved one. Then don't. Then don't be. I want to have them still in body. Well, then invite them into your world. Talk to them. Invite them. If you miss their physical, quiet your mind, find a place. And I challenge if you don't feel some sort of solace or comfort. So whatever it is that you want, that you feel separated from, you can have. You just have to be open to it. And we start going towards death the moment that we are conceived. We know that. We live in a world. So put a little bit of faith in that. Live a little bit more like you have a limited time offer, and make it beautiful. And everyone that's in your life, treasure them. And if it feels woo-woo, I just say try it. Try it. Try anything. That's why Buddhism really resonates with me, is because if I tried it or if I went through it and I gained a benefit from it, then I know it to be true. If I aligned with it and something pulled me towards it, my heart opened, you know it's the right thing. If something constricts, fear-based, makes you small, makes you go in, it's not of the light, or it's limiting you. If you don't even want to play in those realms, it limits you. So we're meant to be expansive. We're meant to be open. We're meant to have experiences. And we are capable of so much. So if you just start looking at things with gratitude and not being fearful, try it on. And if it works, I'll claim it.
Yeah.
You don't have to listen to someone else's teaching to get it. Start ending that gap of looking without to the preacher or to the government or to your medical advice. Go within, and then you will always be met with what you need. You always will. And so I say, take the challenge. Challenge me. Go try it and see what happens, because you won't be let down.
Whoa. This is so exciting. I want everybody to get this. I hope if you're listening, you're really, really getting what's being said here, what's being discussed. So let's talk about the series that you and your husband, Craig, are involved in, because that is something also that people may want to go and check out, because you just take people through the beautiful stages and introduce them to the concepts and all the different people who have experienced the different things. So talk to us about that series, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, so he did The Awakening. It's a 4-part documentary series about what the world is experiencing. And then he, in the first episode, it takes a couple parents that have transitioned a child, which I'm a part of. And then he brings in some, ascended beings that give us tools to end karmic cycles, life loops, if you will, and is trying to set the stage that we're going towards rebalancing of the earth. And as humanity, we're getting back to the things that we already innately know, the innate language, the inner knowing, and encouraging people that once you do that, you won't be so affected by the resources outside yourself, but you'll become the resource that you should be. And then when you have your inner knowing and your inner light, it just adds to the whole. It adds to the whole. So if all of us just step into that purest part of our essence by doing the inventory, we just put out another video, just to do an inventory, a quick inventory of your life, and start addressing the things that you've been putting off.
Because
it's really...
Sorry, Julie. So I'm a great believer that there's no accidents, is there? That, when you get drawn to something, there's a reason you need to look at it or hear it.
Yeah. So The Awakening, it's our attempt to put out the message, to try to add positive light to the world so people have a place to go to find, how do you do it? Where do you start? And what is it like when you're in a tragedy, to hear it from someone else's perspective who's courageous enough to share their story and to show the beautiful side of life. If you look at life as a school, and we're here, and everything that you've been given, what do you do with it? Be more consciously aware of your choices. Be more consciously aware of the power you have to make a difference, to be remarkable, and to be, you're not, you might play simple, but you're very capable of many, many things. Many things. And you don't even have to go do something grand, because some of them, as you probably know from some of the signs you've gotten from your daughter, the most smallest, mundane, simplest sign that Dakota gives me is eons more profound than getting a bonus from work, So that small of a difference that you make is what matters. And when you go to the afterlife, you're going to get to see each and every one of those little things that made a difference along the way. And that's from the afterlife's perspective. You're going to look back and say, if only I were there, I would lift people up more. I would be more supportive. I would love. They all say the same thing in the afterlife. So, so just live more lighthearted, live as if everything is okay. And then watch how things start to shift.
Yes. And you and I are living examples of this, seriously. And I know for myself, like, if people knew my life beforehand and all the trials and struggles and heartaches, and gosh, I don't even know how I got to this age because, I had really so much happening in my life. And now I just live with this beautiful simplicity where I'm happy, I'm calm, I'm peaceful, I'm joyful, I'm grateful. And that's how I want to live. I don't really need anything bigger than that. I'm guided to be doing this. I feel it's a privilege. And I just allow my life just to say, okay, this is where we're going. And let it take me on this incredible journey that I'm now on. So that's a privilege. So just before we get to your takeaways, I would love to know, what's the best thing that's happened to you today?
The best thing that's happened to me today is when I was working in my garden before I jumped on here with you, a ladybug landed on me. I always take that as a good sign. And then as I was walking back up, 2 hummingbirds came right up to me, so close that I felt their wings. And I said, hello. aren't you the most precious thing? And they flew off and showed me they have a little nest where there's eggs. And hummingbirds will create a nest in peaceful places. And so I didn't have to pay for that. I didn't have to seek that. It literally came to me because I walk with my eyes open to the sun, to the flowers that bloom. I've learned to put my attention to the things that are God-given.
Mm-hmm.
And my focus is no longer on angst or need. I just wait for things like that to show up.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for sharing that. It's wonderful. Do you have moments in your day where things are not quite going the way you'd like them to? What is it you do or find the most useful tool to pivot yourself out of it and get yourself back on track again?
My husband and I were just talking about this the last couple of days because we're doing some renovations in our house and contractors don't show up or tools don't work like they're supposed to. And we realized, why be frustrated with it? The minute that something doesn't go as planned, shift immediately to the next step of action. Even misqualifying a little bit of our energy to talk about how frustrating it is that this and this and this didn't happen. Just the mere repeating of it adds to the initial letdown. So being able to just consciously be in that place of neutrality.
Yeah.
Okay, the contractor didn't come. What are we going to do next? That opens up something for us to shift. So realizing that even when I have those days where I miss Dakota, I go directly to Dakota. I pause. I just settle in. I remember my own divinity. I remember I will be crossing a threshold myself. I give him so much love for going before me. I kind of tell him how brave he was and how magnificent that transition must have been. And I will see you soon. And I find him in the sun and in the birds and in the sky. And I put my faith in the fact that this is one dimension. This is just one dimension. Eternal Dakota exists. Eternal me exists, regardless of this reality. So just be a little bit more lighthearted with it. Don't take life so detrimental. If something's not working, let it go.
Yeah.
Shift. If the house that you come home, you get a dread, find a new house. Shift your energy. If you keep finding what we call a life loop, some people are kind of turned off by the word karma. If you just keep coming back to the same energy on something, address it. Because it's not going to change until you change it.
Absolutely. Great advice there. Yeah. Don't give anything that's not going so well or the way you want it to any energy. Like you say, shift your energy to something.
Don't give it any energy.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Great. And the thing that you're most proud of that you've achieved so far in your life?
It's funny when you think that you're proud of something, because I think that others can be proud of you, but to be proud yourself doesn't ever feel humble. I'm always like, it's not, I'm just the vessel. I'm just, like you said, we said at the beginning, I'm just the open conduit. But I would say the moment when Dakota transitioned, I was so thankful that when he was in body, I loved him so much. I was so proud of myself for dearly loving someone and never squandering a moment of his life. And I knew that when I had him there and I was putting to rest his body, I remember feeling, I'm so proud of you, Julie, because you loved this kid. I know he knows. We were like this, like you said. He was wrapped around me for his whole childhood. And ironically, he only lived a child. So his most impact was me. I was a single mom. So I know that we designed that, or it was encoded in some way. And for that, I am so proud of myself because I didn't squander a second with him.
That is precious. Very, very precious. All right. What would you like to leave our listeners with?
Love is the only real thing. Love is real. So whenever you feel off kilter or imbalanced, always go back to love. It is what is real. It's what you will take with you when you go to the next, to the afterlife. So fill your life up with it, give more of it, really pause on those moments when you give someone a hug and do it longer than 3 seconds. Create that embrace. Create those bonds created with someone. When you say something, choose your words. Be a wordsmith. Choose words that are inviting, that are soft, that are delicate. Speak more softly. And I tell you, you will impact everyone around you because they will soften because you are soft. Or be gentle or be kind, but start being the energy that you want to be, because we are emotional beings. We emote what we are. So, so choose that. Choose it today. Don't squander this beautiful life force energy that you've been given. It's what moves your body around on this earth, is the spark of love and light. That grief can be transcended through the heart. If you get out of the mind telling you all the things that you don't have, that was taken from you, just quiet it. And drop into your heart, and you'll know there's more to this than what's perceived as a separation. And then you can learn to unravel the gift in whatever transitional experience you have, whatever, if it's a child you lost. So grief can be transcended right from the beginning. And I tell you, if you trust that, you won't lose marriages, you won't lose decades, you won't lose your other children, you won't lose all the collateral damage by trusting the one thing that you think you're separated from, which is the love and the child or the being that you once shared time with. So choose to not be separated, and you won't be. And then the last one would be that emotions are just energetic feedback in your relation to love. So if someone makes you angry, it's the anger standing in the place of really loving unconditional, that neutrality place and all that is. So start to be aware that your emotions are just giving you your now moment. How are you right now? Let the emotion give you your feedback, and then always realign with love and light and wholeness. And I'm constantly clearing my channel myself and always trying to consciously make sure that I hold my space that's of the highest that I'm capable of. And I'm always also praying or intending to be less the container and more of my soul essence, because I know that my son is exactly that. He is all of his soul essence and not in a container. So I walk being less the container and more of a soul essence that he is, like he is.
Wow. Those are wonderful, wonderful pieces of advice. Look, anybody listening, you can go to the episode notes, and I definitely will have all the links to the different things that we've discussed here. But, quickly tell us, Julie, if somebody is listening right here and they want to go and check out more about what you do, how can they do that? What's the best way?
You can go to Life to Afterlife Spirituality Series, which is our YouTube channel. And you can also go to lifetoafterlife.com.
Wonderful, wonderful. Julie, I can't tell you what an absolute pleasure it has been connecting with you, having you share so much beautiful, valuable perspectives from your own personal experiences, but also the greater ones as well, the universal ones that we need to know. And I have just felt so emotional this whole time. I could feel your beautiful boy with us. I could feel my beautiful girl, and I could feel them just smiling and beaming at what we're doing. And, to me, this makes it more than okay, more than worthwhile. And I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for giving us this time and this information.
I'm so thankful that you came into my life. It's nice to meet you, to see your beautiful face and across the world, because we're a world apart on this planet. And it's been such an honor. I was so excited to meet you. I could feel your heart all these thousands of miles away.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks for listening. I hope you got some real value from this episode. Let me know how I'm doing, or if there's a topic you'd like covered, by clicking on the Healing to Be You Gmail link or going to the Healing to Be You website. To get notified of new episodes, hit the subscribe button and please share if you know of someone who could benefit from this episode. Until next time, be kind to you and take good care.